Okay, ready to go.
All right.
Electromagnetic radiation has caused a lot of problems.
You have 10 minutes to present.
Yeah, okay, I'm trying to, this is a video, I'm trying to get people see that there's problems around the world. And this is sort of a rough idea. 25-30% people demonstrate problems, and there's more all the time. In Spain, it is ruled a compensated disability. In France, a woman has had her smart meter had to be removed from her home by court order because of it. In Sweden, it's a functional impairment which triggers something like there are CPP disability benefits. In Canada, it is environmental sensitivity which is to be accommodated. Now, there's a great many concerns, but today I'm going to speak about just the one in particular, quality of life matter, the electromagnetic hypersensitivity, or EHS as it's abbreviated sometimes.
I believe that a one-time exposure to a large amount of electromagnetic radiation was the cause of my electromagnetic hypersensitivity. I also know that it was the cause of my acoustic neuroma or brain tumor, the effects of which I have to live with 24/7 for the rest of my life.
I thought I'd let you read that part, but I have a chronic case of hives because of all the radiation that I'm putting up with all the time, and that is a serious problem. I mean, it's destroying my entire quality of life. And public health is quality of life. It is part of the municipal charter. In a recent survey you people did, it is part of one of the questions you're asking about. So it is within your mandate to deal with this issue. Now, I have a number of papers. This particular paper, there's a good little discussion here about it, which I've expanded the paragraph. If anyone wants that paper, or I've got over 2,000 papers if you really need to read more about the problems with radiation. I know you won't. I haven't read them all either. But it's a problem that's getting worse for people and is causing a lot of stress. Now this says 2017. Actually, they knew about it in the 1800s, that there was a problem. And as I say, the whole process is getting much worse and is causing a lot of problems for a lot of people, and more are feeling it every day. Now this is Greater Victoria. That these are just the TELUS e-nodes that have been added recently, and these are a very serious issue. Brentwood has got all of these. I can't go into Brentwood for long. In the green circles are the e-nodes. This was taken off the island, that picture, so is this one, but it looks the same. Now, Saanich has the Go Wi-Fi hotspots. If you want to get an idea of what sort of the area of, that's only some of the various hotspot networks, etc., that are in the area. And as I say, it's getting worse. This is discussing that the 5G rollout of these e-nodes that TELUS is putting up now are going to get much worse, and what is even worse is that the frequencies they're operating on, or will be operating on, haven't even been tested on the people. So when the regulators and industry say it's safe, how do they know? They haven't tested it. And someone's got to stand up and say, no, until you've tested it on the people, you don't test it on people in Central Saanich. Some of the other problems with this is the energy consumption of them. That I'll get into that in a minute, but industry has so little respect for the people. They think gaining permission to deploy equipment or addressing health concerns or bothersome encumbrances in rolling out EMR everywhere. Now, that was from an industry document. If you look at the bottom part of that, that's where they're mentioning that again. Now, the key takeaway on this is 96% of the data is consumed indoors. They don't even need the e-nodes for anything more than 4% of the data. So for 4%, they are making my life hell. That there's something wrong. and especially when you realize what 4% of the data, what most of it is. Now, one of the other problems is the massive use of power that the high-speed wireless internet is using. That's quite a concern. These are industry documents talking about the concerns. Once again, I can make these documents available, but I thought there was a limit to what you would look at in the package I gave you. The important thing to recognize is that these microcells are not an efficient way to deliver data communication and is adding to everyone's carbon footprint. When you think about it, they're run 24/7, basically warmed up, ready to go in case somebody wanders by with whatever device and wants to use one. And collectively speaking, it's a massive amount of power they're using. That it's not a green solution, and there are better and safer ways to get the data or get the connection to people. This Dr. Chisner is a medical doctor in the United Kingdom, and that'll start coming up in a minute. There we are. He studied it quite extensively and recently wrote an open letter to his fellow practitioners globally about particularly electrosensitivity. But one thing that he notes, and I think it's something everyone should realize, is that they don't know the safety of these devices. And as he says, safety always lags technological advance. Now, this is part of his letter. Zooming in on the safety always lags technical advance. Now, I could go on for hours on that, but the municipality does have tools they can deal with this in a number of ways. I wouldn't even want to say that what I have are the limit of your tools, that I'm sure you can come up with more. Grand Forks has recently submitted a resolution to go up through the process to be at the UBCM about that. I have a copy of the resolution later. The community charter gives the municipality authority. Then these right-of-ways are being used for commercial purposes now, which is not what the right-of-ways were intended for. And the municipality has no contractual agreement to allow them to do that. The Utilities Corridor Agreement does not give you the right, or does not collect money from them for that purpose. And it's giving particular businesses quite an advantage. There's also a number of structural or building issues that can be looked at. That utility poles are structures, and they're being used for a different purpose than they were originally intended for, which does trigger all sorts of building bylaw considerations that have to be looked at. And remember, they are causing harm to people that's going on. That when I walk down East Saanich, sometimes I can barely walk past all the units. Now, this is a frightening thing. A telespokesman telling a woman in Langford that the E-node is safe and harmless as long as she doesn't spend much time in her front yard. That when did TELUS get the right to expropriate people's property? That TELUS denies the person said it, but I'm quite convinced that the woman told me the truth. That they don't have the right to expropriate someone's property without even notifying them. They don't have the right to set up a business in a public right-of-way without going through the bylaw. I couldn't do that with the vending machine. I mentioned the City of Grand Forks resolution that they are putting forward.
You have about 1 minute remaining.
Yeah, presentation is 9.5 minutes. That's the advantage with the video. Now, I can make a copy of this resolution that I would really like to see you people seriously think of. A resolution to have the telecom companies consult with members of the public in each municipality before they put these things up. And if you timed that, it was 9 minutes and 33 seconds.
Fair enough. Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me begin by thanking the presenter and and saying, yes, please, the motion that Grand Forks is putting forward. I know that members of council will receive it if, in fact, it's going to the UBCM anyway, but certainly in text for our information, I think that could be useful. I'm a believer in using the precautionary principle where there's a potential growth, a potential great health impact. And normally you use this principle when you have approving power, so you have the option to approve or not approve based on the precautionary principle, as I would see it. I don't know that we have that power in this case. I think Mr. Ryder suggests that we as a municipality have a mandate to deal with this issue because it is a quality of life issue. I think I would need a bit more information, even though that is in the community charter. I don't know if that really gives us carte blanche to deal with the many, many, many quality of life issues that could be federal, impinging on federal jurisdiction, other jurisdictions. Doesn't mean that we can't make a statement, of course, as a municipality, but may have no effect over the jurisdiction that has the authority to make the decision. Ultimately, well, very briefly, Mr. Ryder mentioned some tools that we have, but I wasn't sure if he listed all of them. If he did, that's fine. The motion from Grand Forks is of interest. There was mention of a utilities agreement. I'm not sure if that is something that the municipality itself could have much authority over. Perhaps I'd seek clarification. Buildings not being used for their intended purpose. It's an interesting argument that, okay, a building's been approved, it's been built, and they stick an antenna on it. Can you go back to them and say, hey, you didn't include an antenna when you came forward with the application, now you have to tear down the building or whatever? But so through you two staff, I'd wonder if, in fact, the municipality would have any grounds for saying, because an antenna was put on after a building was built, to tell them that you're not allowed to have an antenna. It seems to me it would be federal jurisdiction, I think, but I'll just seek clarification on that.
Through your worship, it would be a land use and what are permitted uses within a zone. And so that would go to the crux of whether it was a permitted use within a specific zone.
Would an antenna, for instance, affect building height? So if the building was approved to 16 meters and there was an antenna on top?
I'm told that it is exempt.
Okay.
In terms of height.
So in terms of height, it's exempt. If it's a TELUS antenna for their operations, is that exempt? Even if it's not affecting height, is that something that we have jurisdiction over? If TELUS negotiates with a building owner and attaches a receiver or antenna to a building, do we have a say?
Staff?
Through your worship, what I can shed some light on is what we have regulated in the land use bylaw is that the cell phone tower has been identified as a separate use, where the tower itself is the structure, which we have sort of a zone that allows that for a few that have been permitted that way. The equipment, the little antenna, the placement of an antenna or something like that on an existing building or structure, I think it's been deemed to be a really accessory to the building, and so not necessarily wouldn't trigger a change of use. It would be an accessory use, like a TV antenna or that sort of thing. But our land use bylaw does have an exemption for height for antennas and aerials and chimneys and a number of specific items like that.
Right. And thank you. And so ultimately my question to Mr. Ryder is, what action would Mr. Ryder be suggesting that a municipality like Central Saanich take?
All right. Mr. Ryder?
Well, there's a couple of things there. I was not talking about cell towers, which is a whole different discussion. These are units added to the telephone poles in the public right-of-way and owned by the people, which the cell towers, no, we can go long ways on that, but not tonight. I don't think you want that. On the precautionary principle is, shall we say, enforced in Canada. The federal government has recognized the precautionary principle is within, shall we say, Canadian law, so I would assume
just a point
that extends down to the municipal level as well, that they should be using the precautionary principle, and not just this, but everything.
I wasn't intending to get into a back and forth on that part. I was more or less
Right.
wondering what action Mr. Ryder was
Yes, and
suggesting.
I went to Mr. Ryder
Understood.
to
Yeah,
clarification.
okay. Well, I wanted to clarify those 2 points. What action is certainly I would like to see support for the resolution, or as I say, your own resolution, that I know you've got some emails from a number of people throughout the province, and they only heard I was coming here today, in support. So it's a broad-based issue that has to be brought up with the UBCM no matter which way people go. It is a
Understood.
public interest.
So thank you for that. I mean, of course, individual council members, if it does get placed on the UBCM's list of resolutions, can vote in favor, or if Mr. Ryder wants to provide that text and council wants to consider endorsing, I suppose. Yeah.
Yep. Councillor Holman next, and then Councillor Paltiel.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to Mr. Ryder for the presentation, and I do look forward to receiving a copy so that I can read all of its content. I guess through the chair to either staff or Mr. Ryder or both, it certainly draws attention to a concern. I'm not feeling equipped at the local government level to understand implications for our health from this technology or advancements in technology. And so what I'm looking for is an understanding either through your research or staff's knowledge, or maybe it's something we need to look at more. But in terms of our public health system, looking at the impacts, if any, or what they are, how to approach it, whether Mr. Ryder or staff can give us some insight in terms of whether...
I'm going to interject as chair because the invited presentation this evening was with regard to where the municipality had, for instance, in the right-of-way equipment placed on infrastructure, and whether or not that met the criteria. The health is clearly the jurisdiction. Improvement of radio is clearly jurisdiction, and I invited Mr. Ryder here based on that. That was the approval of the presentation. Mr. Ryder has kept to that this evening, and I think that it's out of context to ask the question about health, because we do not have a mandate for health directly. Quality of life is touching on a subject which is walking on a very narrow line, but the understanding was, and Mr. Ryder did honor that understanding, was to focus on equipment and municipal infrastructure in such a way. So I'm going to suggest that question, unless it was refocused on that very narrow context in which our mandate exists, is not one that either staff would be able to answer or Mr. Ryder was invited here to answer for us. So,
well, I didn't understand that we have a scope of questions that can or can't be asked. The question was, what information has the presenter, if any, received from our health service that could help inform us about what they do that we could take advantage of to ensure quality of life in that aspect. I'm not looking for any determination, but whether Mr. Ryder has asked our public health system for any information on this that could help inform us. It's certainly information that I'd like to know. So I didn't realize there was a veto on questions.
It's not a veto. It's that the focus of this presentation and the mandate in which we operate is limited. Councillor King touched on it as well, I think, adequately. So I will allow the question in the context of placement of it in terms of the infrastructure on our right-of-way based on health criteria that you may have received from a senior level of government.
I've received nothing from VHA. They don't respond with answers. They basically admit they know nothing about the subject either. I do have a copy of the radio frequency toolkit for environmental health practitioners, which was actually created by the BC Centre for Disease Control, just particularly to answer this question. And if anyone, as I say, if anyone really wants, I can present you with probably 40,000 pages, which you're not going to read. I know that. I don't even. But I have a tremendous volume of scientific which support the reasons why I'm concerned about these items on the polls.
And we appreciate the answer specifically to Councillor Holman's question, which
Yeah.
is, have you been able to get any information with respect to, from a senior level government that would help to inform us? So thank you for that. Councillor Peltiel, you were next.
Just thank you through you to Mr. Ryder, and this is a specific, but are you aware of any local governments across Canada that are bringing this issue specifically around regulation of telecommunications to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, or has it ever been raised before at the at meetings of FCM?
It's essentially the federal version of UBC.
I couldn't tell you that, but I can tell you that the City of Toronto lowered the allowable rate from 1,000 microwatts per square centimeter down to 10 watts per square centimeter, which is in keeping with the precautionary principle. That's what they put in place there. Now, how well it's being enforced, and there could be politics, I don't know now.
Okay. Councillor Peltiel.
Because just as a follow-up to that, I'm just kind of seeing the sentiment of my colleagues, and with all due respect, I just don't feel equipped on a local level to regulate such a thing. And it's one of those things where either it's a issue with buildings, which is a BC building code, or it's a federal telecommunications issue. But regardless, on a local level, while well-being is important for citizens, I just think that it's one of those things that I just, at this point, don't see enough information.
As I say, I have the information available if you want it, but it will take a commitment of time to sit down and look at it. It's not a 10-minute presentation. It can't be.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Are there any other questions for Mr. Ryder? Seeing none, I thank you for your presentation, and you're certainly welcome to submit any follow-up that you think you need.